When you walk through a storm, hold your head up high and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of the storm, there's a golden sky and the sweet silver song of a lark. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, though your dreams be tossed and blown. Walk on with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone. Walk on with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone.
Thank you for joining us today. This is
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. This is the latest edition of the LFC Delaware Podcast. It's Labor Day weekend. It's been This Means More Challenge weekend. And some of the photos that hopefully you saw in the opening segment come from supporting Food Bank of Delaware. And the amazing music, it was largely Talia's creation with a few kind of reprobates in the background doing the vocals on LA, to be mentioned later. So great to have you. So we're going to do our first part. We're going to, essentially, this is about like how Talia became a Liverpool fan and her Liverpool story. And let's not miss out along the way talking about the amazing music that you make. So we have Tim, we have Charlie, and Paul. Thanks for joining us. Summer's over. Oh my goodness. But the Premier League season is about to start again. Seems really weird. Next weekend. Talia, what's your first Liverpool memory?
I say this all the time when people ask me this question, that it does not exist. I don't have a first memory. I have a first feeling, I think is a better way to put it, because for me, I equate sort of my growing up Liverpool memories with spending time with my family. And I have these really vivid memories of just being on the couch, all four of us, with a game on. And when I was younger, I understood less. But as I got older, I started to sort of own it, and it became my thing, not just our family thing. So that's kind of, my memory is more like a feeling than it is a specific memory.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And unlike some of our previous guests, you are wearing red, which I think, you know, we're kind of highly in favor of.
We'll pretend I didn't change before I got here.
So, having said you don't have a specific memory, who, like thinking way back, which is probably my lifetime, not that way back, but who was your favorite player as you were growing up?
So Gerrard, I think, and I know everybody answers that, but it was Gerrard, and it was Gerrard specifically because, and there is an actual good reason, not just because, you know, that's the answer to answer, but when I sort of started to really take ownership of my of being a supporter myself was around 2005 when I was graduating from high school. So, I mean, you know.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was just interesting timing, we'll say. And so I had that fresh in my brain, and I really I went, who is this guy? Who is this person who's doing all these things for our club? I really like him. And that was sort of, you know, the intro to it. And then it became, wow, he's an exceptional player. So it went from sort of just going, whoa, to going, oh, and he, you know, he does this well and he does that well, and sort of, again, owning it and understanding it in a more substantial way.
Uh-huh. Wow. Did anyone get a chance to read the piece on The Athletic this week? Which had Steven Gerrard as number 8 all-time great Premier League player?
No.
No.
What an outstanding question that was then. Anyway.
Yeah, right.
I
What
saw
was their
someone post
basis for
about
that?
it, but didn't read it.
Oh, so The Athletic, which is a subscription service, and if you want to sponsor us, Athletic will be open to that. They have had the 60 greatest players played in the Premier League, and it's really, I mean, it's debatable about who fits where. But yeah, so I think Salah was 25, and most of the fans were appalled that Salah would even be in the list, which we'll talk about later. But and then after Salah was in there, I'm like, oh, no other Liverpool players are going to appear. It's going to be Man United, City, you know. Anyway, Steven Gerrard showed up at number 8, and of course the hate on him was he's never won the league. You know, how does he deserve to be in this list? Anyway.
Yes. So looking back, Talia, having a feeling about him as, you know, Captain Amazing, and then coming to understand it more. If you say that now, he's still the guy. What stands out to you most about him? I'd be interested to know.
So here's the funny thing. I've seen a lot of comparisons between him and Hendo, right? We talk about this a lot. We had this discussion, I think, when we were talking to Chris Perkins, is that his name, who wrote
Yes.
Yeah, Let's Talk About Six. So for me, I don't see it as much as I think other people see it. What I see in common has to do more with a certain leadership role, and whereas Hendo is very sort of verbal and very, I mean, his mere presence, people get in line, you know what I mean? But I think that that Gerrard had sort of an inspirational effect. And even though it's not like he was playing with ninnies, you know what I mean? It's not like he was playing with a team of garbage. But he had this effect on people that I think was leadership in a different way. He did something and people went, oh, wow, that's really cool. And then I think that the effect that had on the feeling of the team, Liverpool has always been a team up here first. And so that, I think, is really, I mean, for me, is really something that stands out so much. And I appreciate it about him. And I think it's what's going to make him an exceptional manager as well, by the way. So
we don't want to jinx anything, but that sounds. So, where did you watch the 2005 final?
I don't think that I actually watched it live, because I don't think we had access to a lot of that stuff when I was that age. We had sort of random things that we watched here and there, but there wasn't a lot of consistency because there wasn't the sheer number of channels, right, that we have now in comparison with the way that it was back then. But I don't think I watched it live. I watched it after the fact, unfortunately. But yeah.
Yeah, well, that's probably better than my experience, which we've talked about on previous shows.
Gosh.
I'm sorry. Just,
Yes.
A memorable museum visit.
Yeah. So, to Vitali's benefit, And anyone else who hasn't watched, I missed the 3 goals for various reasons, but
You
our
missed
3 goals.
the 3 goals that you wanted to see, and you saw the 3 goals that you didn't want to see.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And actually, this is not, so if the Athletic are not sponsoring us after this, then they really should be, because they also have had like the 50th greatest comebacks in sport, and they had Istanbul at number 6 in their list. And there can't be many of the football ones because I haven't seen any of those. They had like the Barcelona one in the top 20, but so they recounted all of the stories of that game, and all these people claiming that I kind of had a sense we were going to come back, and it's like I have no idea what you're thinking because, yeah, whoever you were. So since 2005, there've been a few downs, but mostly there've been a lot of ups. What's your sense of kind of the journey we've been on since then?
So, yeah, that's a really good question. First of all, I want to say that I think the thing that always upsets me the most now that I'm on all these Facebook groups are the people who maybe haven't been part of the ups and downs. And one of the things that always drew me back, even if I was screaming at the screen, was that you still loved the team, regardless of whether it was an up or a down. But I remember in 2010, I was out of college for about a year or so, give or take, and there was a headline, Liverpool's, I actually wrote this down because I wanted to remember it, Liverpool's worst start to a season in 18 years. Are we on the road to nothing? And I actually distinctly remember the feeling at the time of sort of just needing to defend us, like needing to say, no, you don't understand what we're capable of. You don't understand what we have in us. Just wait, just give us a minute, just get, you know. And I think that's the general, that's really it for me, is that with those ups and downs, you know, we know what happened that season. And I think that's a lot of the times the case. If we even look at the game that just happened, that was 2 different games in one game, right? From half number 1 to half number 2. I mean, it's just incredible. And that's the journey they take you on. And sometimes you want to jump off of something, but most of the time, I mean, it's an incredible feeling. Yeah, I think.
So I think back in the era, so we've had this conversation a few times, which is like there've been certain areas where it's like, whose number would you get on your shirt? Well, Gerrard, obviously, but then who else? Yeah. And with this team, you're like, it's really so hard to pick.
Yeah. One.
Yeah.
Well, you guys know, I think we talked about this on one of our Friday night things was I talked about my feelings for Torres because, I mean, he would have been on my shirt for a long time. And let me tell you, I know a lot of people hold a grudge against Suarez. A lot of people, you know, there are a lot of grudges.
Yep.
Sturridge, some big grudges there. My grudge is against Torres, and I have not forgiven him yet. I have not forgiven him yet. And it's deep in my soul.
That Mike alone.
So I'm kind of glad I didn't get that jersey.
So, well, you could have burnt it because that's apparently what everyone else did. So.
Yeah, well.
So Torres is interesting.
Sacrilegious.
What's that?
A little sacrilegious for me.
No, apparently there was a lot of burning of Torres
jerseys.
shirts was going on in 2000, whenever that was.
You're still burning the Liverpool shirt. That's the issue I have.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure we could go YouTube a lot of videos of burning Torres. Anyway,
Yeah.
So
all idiots.
We had Sean Rogers. I don't know if you know him, Talia. He's from the Anfield Rap. He does the review show, and he had said it was interesting because he said that actually the selling Torres was like a masterstroke because he had watched him play like 6 months before, and he completely lost the pace that he had, which made him such a great player. in a game. It's like somebody, was it an Everton player, ran past him who should not have ran past him. Do you remember this? Drawing a blank. Go back in
Yeah, we're
episode
really bad with questions tonight,
45
aren't we?
months ago. Okay, all right. So anyway,
You got to prime us for some of these, Paul.
Remember it well. It was meaningful.
Yes. So anyway, go back and look at it. So anyway, he was of the view that whilst it was, the circumstances were not great, Torres had lost something, and it was actually a masterstroke to sell him for that much money when he wasn't the player that he was in 2009. So.
You know what? I'm not going to say I disagree.
Mm.
And it's not because I'm holding a grudge. It's because I do agree with that. And I think a lot of people were feeling that way toward the end. I think it's similar to, like I said, I don't know why I'm making comparison to Suarez because there's really no comparison, but people talked a lot about the fact that he was no longer necessarily jiving with the values and the feelings of the squad. Anyway, so it's kind of like, sometimes those things happen and it works out. Anything that led us to this squad, I'll take. So.
So right now, Steven Gerrard clearly does not play for us anymore. Who is the standout player for you in this team?
Oh my gosh.
That's a tough question, I know, but
it is a tough question. I think. It's a really tough question. It depends on the day. I think my consistent two are always Henderson and Milner. And the reason has a lot to do with, that's good reaction. The reason has a lot to do with leadership skills and with just having such a good effect on the squad itself. When you have the ability to wordlessly get your teammates to do something, I mean, really. And it was so fun. I don't know if you guys caught this on, what was the day of the last game? I don't even know anymore. Saturday's game? Was it a Saturday?
oh, but
Sounds right.
Yeah, Saturday, yeah.
Blackpool game. So essentially, there was this moment where the commentator was talking about the fact that Milner was talking to somebody on the sidelines. He totally missed something. And I thought to myself, even with that, he's probably a better player than like 90% of the people we see on that pitch.
I think he was talking
Like
to Klopp.
talking to someone on the sideline.
I think he was talking to Klopp, actually. They're having a conversation about how the game should have been going. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and he came right back in, found his way. I mean, so I guess, I guess I'm saying Milner, aren't I?
Milner, yeah, you are. Yeah.
I guess I am.
Well, there's no one you would say like, oh, that's not a good choice, right? Because there's a lot of people in the squad who are.
You just signed for Zenit, so we're good.
Oh, yes. Dejan. Yeah, we can talk about that. So, final thing. You're a board member of LFC Delaware, OLSC Delaware, if anyone's listening from the big club. What's been your experience of being part of, I don't know, the ruling of whatever, the people in charge of the club? So.
I mean, for me, honestly, it's been amazing. I've lived in a couple different places, over the past however many years, and and so for me, sometimes it's difficult when you do that. I have friends all over the country, so to sort of find this little family has been really cool, and to see that. I think the great thing about Liverpool is that, I mean, obviously, every once in a while there might be a supporter who's a little questionable, but 9 times out of 10, it's people who are really good people.
Present company accepted, just saying.
Right, of course, obviously, of course. But it's people who are really good people. We have a value system at Liverpool, and we take it very seriously. So it's been really wonderful.
Yeah. Now, I know that your dad's been a fan for a long time, right?
Yes.
How did he become a Liverpool fan? Because he told me this at one point, and I can't remember what his story was.
The truth is that I don't know the exact story. I do know that when he was growing up, the family was Bayern Munich fans. But you have to understand that the '66 win, the World Cup win of England, was a huge deal in the Middle East. For what may or may not be obvious reasons. This is not a history podcast. I won't get into it. But, you know, England obviously was, you know, something that all of those people were very familiar with. So it was a huge deal. And you kind of sometimes, I think, watched what you had access to. And I know that literally the moment that he watched Liverpool play for the first time, that was that. So I don't exactly know the whole story start to finish. I'm sure he's told me, and when he watches this, he'll be like, "Oh, come on." But I do know that played a big part, and the ability to see those games, I think, was probably really cool, or to hear them on the radio, as it might have been, depending on the game.
As a footnote, you definitely need to share whatever game that was. Because we've had a few different people on. We had Sam, who's a member of our sports club from Ethiopia. We had Nabs from Oman, and like their first games, like totally depended on what the feed was showing, and like it was, like not many games are shown. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really interesting with that generation as well, because then that might have played into who you were supporting, especially if you weren't in Britain proper, if you were elsewhere.
Yep. Charlie, Tim, do you have any other questions?
Well, I do.
Go
One
ahead.
of the other things is earlier this week we were talking about those fantastic songs that we heard to open the podcast. And one of the things that Talia said was a lot of people just know me from LFC and don't know that I have a studio, which I was like, yes, that's me. So one, that was fantastic. You'll Never Walk Alone. You hit some notes that just made my skin tingle a little bit. But what was that all about? And can you tell us a little bit about that project and how that came together?
Sure. So I had this idea in my brain that we can't be together right now. So especially with singing, I mean, guys, I cannot tell you, it's really hard. It's really, really hard. I'm the person who everywhere I am, I'm singing. So I've literally had to consider taking tape and just putting it across my mouth many times. So in my mind, I thought to myself, I just want to get that feeling of, you know, being at the bar. I want to get the feeling of, you know, being with everybody the way we are when we're watching a game. And so I thought to myself, well, what if I got everyone doing Ale Ale? And Paul had said to me that he wanted some combination of Ale Ale and You'll Never Walk Alone. And I was like, how am I going to, those songs have nothing to do with each other musically. How am I going to, and then I thought, what's the pivot chord? And I started getting really nerdy with it. And I was like, oh, forget about this. So I did it a cappella because that's what you do when you're in that situation. So I basically got everybody's tracks, and thank you to everybody who sent them in. You guys sounded awesome. Everybody was so self-conscious, but you guys sounded amazing. And I basically layered them, and I made some studio magic to make it sound like we were all, you know, in a place that we definitely were not, because I'm pretty sure we were all in our bedrooms. And that was that. And then there you go. And as far as You'll Never Walk Alone, I thought that the more bare, the better, so that we could really kind of get the feeling of what the weekend meant. And again, charity, it's a huge, huge, huge part of being a Liverpool supporter. So I wanted to, my cat is agreeing with me. So I wanted to evoke that feeling that we get when we all sing that together. So.
And those are much better questions than any of the ones I asked. Thank you.
Well done.
Yeah.
They were all good questions.
So I guess if you'll listen to this and you've made it this far and somehow you don't know that this was the LFC Foundation's This Means More Challenge weekend, then we've been doing a bunch of different things. But when we hopefully put together our video with my 13-year-old son, you will find that we not only collected food together, we kind of did the thing that you pulled together, which is absolutely awesome in terms of the music. We also, there were like 9 of us, I think, volunteer time at the food bank on Friday, which I'm so sorry that unfortunately they don't do weekends of those things. So it's going to be hard to get more of our people out to do it. But nevertheless, hopefully it will turn out to be a fantastic contribution. And we may not get to talk to Jurgen Klopp personally, but we give it a good go. So
Unless he wants to come on the podcast.
yeah, Jurgen, if you're listening, come on, we're right here. So. Charlie, do you have a question?
Look, I had a comment. It's interesting. We've had a few people nominate Stevie G as their favorite, and it seems to me to be kind of a generational thing. Depends when you really started following and when you got involved. And the more I hear about the people's adoration and adulation for the guy, the more I'm convinced that I'd love to say that I think Hendo is probably going to have the same kind of legacy in 5 or 10 years' time with the kids who are getting into it now. So not really a question, but maybe a comment about my observation.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I have a random question, actually, which I never ask of anyone because it's on the list and we usually run out of time. But do you have a recommended book that you've read that you would think, oh, it's a bad question? I can see already. No.
No, it's not that it's a bad question. I just, I'll be really honest. I'm very, very bad at remembering titles of things. Songs, albums, books. I'll go the one with the guy and the thing. Like, I'm not even joking. Is that one that you recommend, Paul?
No, I had a
all
book
about
with
it.
me. I just thought,
I'm joking.
Oh, that's a good book. Yeah,
I mean, Talia's already recommended Chris Perkins' Let's Talk About 6.
She did.
I technically did.
Whether you read the book or not,
no.
Chris Perkins was a nice guy. So
I did read the book, and it's actually really interesting. But no, I don't know. I don't know. I don't have an answer for you.
However, to close out this week's episode of My Liverpool Story, Charlie's recommending Perched by
Paul Tompkins.
And we may talk about this in part 2, but this is Zonal Marking by Michael Cox, who today published an article in Athletic which said the playbook to beat Liverpool. We'll leave it there. Talia, thank you so much for joining us.
Ooh, a cliffhanger.
What's that?
A cliffhanger. Sorry.
Clearly, we're not our views on episode 1 are feeding episode 2, so we need to do something. Talia, thank you so much for joining us on episode 1 of this week's LFC Delaware podcast. Charlie,
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.